This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, I'm Aaron, aka Uncle Landdrops from the General Zone blog.
And I'm Matt, aka Matt, and today we'll be presenting my Taniwha Gyarados deck
On CMDR decks.
I've got my friend Aaron, aka Uncle Landdrops, here to help me showcase Taniwha, make sure I don't miss anything.
Hey guys.
Alright, so we've got our General Taniwha. He is a Legendary Serpent for 3 and double blue, 7/7, phasing, trample, and at the beginning of your upkeep, all lands you control phase out.
So one of the weird and interesting things about Taniwha, Taniwha is also a Gyarados, first of all. This is an art that I did for Matt as part of our little Pokemon theme in our playgroup. We just recently added a Hirobi Firo, which is pretty exciting, alongside Reaper King Victory Bell and my Grill Gengar, which you guys probably saw earlier on in the previous post of my Grill deck. And anyway, I'll let Matt continue with phasing.
Alright, well, phasing is a very odd mechanic in that it doesn't actually have a way to represent it. Like, everyone knows that you tap a card, turn it sideways. Morph, like on Zoetic Cavern, is turned face down. Kamigawa had cards that were turned upside down, but phasing doesn't have a proper orientation for it, so to represent it, I just have these shiny cards and sleeves.
It's a pretty effective way, especially because we play so many different things, and Commander is such an interesting format, and Matt's really able to effectively use the phasing mechanic in this deck, and that's a lot of what the deck is geared around too. So, a couple of non-basics that he's got.
The Zoetic Cavern.
And then Student of Elements, obviously, is the creature.
Yes. Then I've got mostly islands. They're from Tempest. I just like the arts.
Yeah. About 35 in there, I think.
Mm-hmm. Is that...
Yep.
Yep.
So this is Remote Isle. He's got a couple of cycle lands that he runs in here, just simply as ways to draw extra cards. Remote Isle and Lonely Sandbar. And then he's got Teferi's Isle, which has phasing. Enters battlefield tapped, and it adds double blue. Kind of exciting. It's kind of a weird little land, but it's part of Magic history, so it's for the Vorthos folk.
Now we've got Vanishing, which is popular in some of the bigger EDH decks.
Mm-hmm. Zur and Bruno like to play it, or I'm sorry, Zur and Blue Braids like to play it.
Yeah, it's a aura that you can use to phase out the enchanted creature, which is pretty cool. As both a form of temporary removal and as disruption, and you can use it defensively to help your creatures avoid targeted removal.
Yeah.
Mist Dragon has an activated ability for 3 and double blue to phase itself out, kind of like it has a more expensive Vanishing on it already. It's a 4/4, and it can fly or not at will. Yeah,
it's got a 0 activated ability, so it's a very interesting little card here. And every time Matt plays it, it's pretty fun.
Vodalian Illusionist is a creature with an activated ability for double blue and tap it to phase out target creature. Again, same idea.
Removal, protection, and Matt's using these in all these offensive, defensive, and kind of card advantage-y ways to leverage value. So it's not just the anti-value when he plays Taniwha. You can actually do cool stuff to ensure that Taniwha gets to phase back in next turn, and do cool stuff and interesting interactions like that.
Time and Tide is an instant for double blue. All creatures that are phased out phase back in, and all creatures with phasing phase out. It can go on the Isochron Scepter, and it really helps manipulate the board in interesting ways.
So this is Shimmer here. Shimmer, when it comes into play, Matt chooses a basic land type. A lot of times it's the most common land on the board, even if it's island, because Matt's already, if he's got Taniwha on the board, it doesn't matter. And then it says all lands of the chosen type get phasing. So this is one of the ways that he's kind of griefering the board, and it's a pretty effective way.
Another one that I use to grief my opponent's lands is the Quicksilver Fountain, which at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they're putting a flood counter on one of their lands, and all those lands are islands for as long as they have flood counters on them, even if Quicksilver Fountain leaves the battlefield. So destroying it doesn't help. And if all the lands are islands, all the flood counters get removed, and we start over at the beginning of it. And people really don't like that.
Yeah. So obvious card is obvious. This is a Lightning Greaves. This next one is Artful Dodges. This is an interesting one. It's a 1-cost blue card, sorcery speed. Target creature gets unblockable. He's got a lot of evasion in here, but this helps him get more damage in. So,
and with the flashback, I can use it twice.
It supplements the aggressive nature of this deck because it wants to attack when it has creatures with phasing that are phased in. So when it's important to get damage through.
Yeah, favorable wins. I'm running a lot of flying as a good form of evasion, and this gives all my flyers +1/+1. Now, Teferi's Veil. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it phases out at enough combat. That will let my aggressive phasing creatures phase back in on my turn so they can attack every turn, and helps my aggressive creatures avoid sorcery speed removal. Teferi's Curse is aura that can go on in a creature or an artifact to give it phasing as a good form of somewhat restricted removal, but Cloak of Invisibility gives phasing and can't be blocked except by walls to a creature, which can be used aggressively or offensively.
So we got Volrath's Curse. This is a kind of a pacifism, but it has a condition. If a player sacks a permanent, they can ignore that ability till end of turn. It's actually more like a rest, because activated abilities don't work either. And then he can actually bounce it back to his hand. So it's a little bit better than all those cards that I just mentioned in white. Some basic removal, disruption stuff to supplement the nonsense. Cyclonic Rift. We've got AEtherize, return attacking creatures. Evacuation, just bounce everything. Memory Lapse, everybody loses to this card at some point. Hinder, and Spell Crumple. And Spell Jack as well, so you can take stuff from people.
Now, Copy Artifact is a great little card. It's 2 mana to copy an artifact, obviously. In our group, people tend not to run artifacts unless they're good, so that means I'm going to copy something good.
Yeah, he's got Gilded Lotus. He's actually even inspired me. I've played it in a couple of decks already too, and it's just not having a whole lot of artifacts. It allows us to play our stuff and still be pretty awesome. Sculpting Steel again, same reason we're playing that.
Now, Isochron Scepter is a great card. Everyone knows what Isochron Scepter does, but here's some of the cards I have for it. Reality Ripple. Target artifact, creature, or land phases out. So this is a good removal in a tight spot and can help your permanents evade removal.
Yeah, even if it's just a one-shot thing, if it's not on Isochron, it's still pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sapphire Charm. Let me skip this. You tell me the next one.
Well, Sapphire Charm does a variety of things. It gives a creature flying. It gives a creature an opponent controls phasing, or phases them out, and then it actually also draws you a card at next upkeep.
That's the one I couldn't remember that I had to read.
Those were all the cool little things that Sapphire Charm does. We actually play this even without phasing, but even in this deck, it's really cool and themey, and it makes it really nice.
Now, Leap and Shadow Rift are very similar cards. They're 1 blue cantrips that give a creature evasion, that evasion being flying or shadow, which they are great sources of just cheap cantrips that can go on the Isochron, or even without the Isochron, they replace themselves.
Yeah, Matt plays a lot of ninjas because he loves the unblockable stuff. He also it allows him to really get flexible with some of the enters battlefield effects that he has on his creatures, as well as just generally having ninjas is awesome. So we've got Haguri, the Steel Wind. We've got Mistblade Shinobi. We've got the Walker of Secret Ways and Ninja of the Deep Hours. So those guys get used quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun. It adds some fun to the deck, even though it's kind of not on theme. It's still kind of on theme.
Tolarian Drake is a 3 mana 2/4 flyer with phasing, efficient attacker or blocker.
Yep. This next one is Sandbar Crocodile. It's a 6/5 for 4 and a blue with phasing. You got a Dream Fighter. This is a really interesting card. I actually learned about this card on Commander Cast. Whenever it blocks or is blocked by a creature, Dreamfighter and that creature both phase out at end of combat. Or no, they fade out immediately. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting, weird little card that can force removal and force people to trade. A lot of times it's just generally it just says I'm unblockable. So it's a cool little thing.
Or is the best chump blocker in the game because your first strike Death Toucher just gets phased out before it can kill him.
Yeah. This is Windreader Sphinx. Most of you guys know what this card is. It gives a lot of stuff. Matt said already that he's got a lot of flyers. This allows him to draw a bunch of cards. And it's foil, which is sweet too. This is Archetype of Imagination. Creatures you control have flying. Creatures your opponents control can have or gain flying. So, Newborn of the Gods tech is even in here as well.
Now, I think this is a good time to say Student of Elements is a 1 and a blue for a 1/1, and when he gets flying, he flips. And when he flips, all your stuff has flying. So it's another source of flying enabling.
Yeah, so we've got plenty of ways to get flying. Again, Wonder, just more awesome, redundant. He's gonna have flying, and there's nothing you're gonna do about it. Thieving Magpie, super cool, draws you a card, little flyer.
Gliding Listed, if you don't know what Listids do, look them up and pray that you can wade through the bad stuff about them because they are rules nightmares, but this is a flying Listed.
Yeah. So you've got Merfolk Thaumaturgist. This one actually is a goofy one. It switches target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So there's a couple of cards, if you notice, there's a 2/4 flyer, some weird mana cost. He can turn his Thieving Magpie into a 3/1 flyer. There's a lot of cool things that Thaumaturgist can do, and it shuts down Doran, which is a deck that I actually play.
Vaporous Djinn is just a 3/4 flyer with
an upkeep
cost, or it phases out.
Sage Owl, pretty nice. He actually bounces this card quite a bit, and it's kind of funny because Augury Owl is clearly superior, but Matt doesn't always like to play the most optimal cards in certain situations, and Sage Owl is definitely a nicer. This one's definitely nicer with a cooler border and better art.
The Sage of Epityr is basically the same thing for 1 less without flying and Wizard, so it's a relevant tribe if you're running a tribal deck. But I'm not. But the 1-drop deck fixing is really nice when it comes to the body.
He's got a few cheap cards in here too that really help that out. This is Skyshroud Condor. He can't play it unless he's played another creature spell this turn. Or just a
spell.
Just
Any
another
spell.
Okay. Yeah, so it's just a little 2/2 flyer again.
A 2/2 flyer for 2 is
Yeah.
not anything to scoff at, though.
So Drake Familiar, we were actually just talking about this card. It's pretty funny. It's a 2/1 flyer for 1 in the blue. When it comes into play, it's sacrificed unless an enchantment gets returned to its owner's hand. So Matt plays some enchantments,
but it doesn't have to be an enchantment I control. I can bounce your enchantments with his drawback.
Which is funny that this guy can pretty much laugh at gods.
Spindrift Drake is a 2/1 flyer for 1 blue with a 1 blue upkeep. When you've got 2 power and evasion and a 1-drop, it's not anything bad.
The aggro side of the deck, obviously. Faerie Imposter, another 2/1 flyer that can bounce his creatures. So
if you get that off of after the Sage of Epityr, the Owl, you're getting real value out of it.
Deep Sea Kraken's a nice one. It's kind of new. You can suspend it for a bunch for 2 and a blue, and every time an opponent casts a spell, if Deep Sea Kraken is still suspended, you can remove a time counter from it. So it's another way that he can get a big threat into play. And this is one of his few big threats that he actually plays in the deck, and they're pretty solid, and they all have evasion.
Yeah. Ludovic's Test Subject is a big threat on an installment plan, basically.
Yeah. New cards are pretty cool, too.
Looter il-Kor is Shadow, which is a great form of evasion, and when he deals damage to an opponent, loot. So
yeah, it's one of the cards that we all kind of like to play in our metagame, so it's an interesting one. Phantom Warrior here is just everybody pretty much knows this card. It's a little 2/2 unblockable guy. Usually a limited master. People like to play this card in limited a lot in core sets, and it's actually pretty good in here too because he can just beat down.
Sharding Sphinx is a really interesting card because he makes token Thopters, and then he enables those tokens to make more tokens.
Yeah, it can get out of hand really quickly, and the art is really, pretty gorgeous on this card, and it's one of the better mat threats in this deck.
With the archetype of what's it an archetype of?
Imagination.
Imagination, that's it. So your opponents can't have flyers to block it, or if you've got the Sphinx that enables you to draw cards.
Oh, Windreader, yeah.
And I don't remember card names, apparently.
It's cool.
But those both work really well with that.
Also, copy artifact, Sculpting Steel.
Yes.
Synergy he didn't even know he had. This is Tromocratus, but we call him Thromocrates in our group. And everybody pretty much knows this. This is a new Born of the Gods limited beatdown tech, basically. But Matt's playing it in here, and it's just a good card.
Teferi's Drake is a 3-power, 3-drop flyer with phasing, so not much to say about that.
Yep. We've got Rainbow of Freet, just another little phasing dude. This has optional phasing as an activated ability. So.
Yeah, basically built-in Vanishing.
Yeah. Conundrum Sphinx is a fun card.
It is fun. If I get my library manipulation, I'm getting guaranteed cards off of it. If not, it's still a fun little mini game.
Yeah.
And even without that, it's a 4/4 flyer for 4, so it's an efficient combat creature.
Mana War here, just pretty much Mana War and Aether Adept, I believe, is the next card.
Yes.
Both of these cards just bounce creatures to their owner's hand. And again, this is another way that Matt can get his little engine online. So.
Or as removal. A lot of cards in this deck have multiple uses as using against your opponent's creatures or on your own stuff. And Quicksilver Elemental is a recent addition. I mean, there's a lot of creatures in here with interesting, unusual, and fun activated abilities. So. And
this is the last card, so it's a pretty nice one. Mm-hmm. Overall, cool deck.
Gyarados and I would like to thank you for watching CMDR Decks.
As always, favorite and subscribe.